are back again. Shawn and Jeremy here from menzagaming.net, bringing you part 2 of the Menza Open list writing workshop. In this video, Jeremy and I are going to look at taking our lists that we took to the Norris1000, an event that ran last weekend, and we're going to break them down and then rebuild them as competitive 1350 event lists with sideboards included.
Yours is a bit like the sword of Narsil in Lord of the Rings, you know, that gets broken, the shards, and they reforge it into Anduril.
Like Voltron or something.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, your list definitely got broken. So,
yes, it did. Absolutely.
It's reforged.
Not the only thing that got broken that weekend, unfortunately. But anyway, so do you want to kick us off, Jeremy, with your Eldar list?
So we've just gone through what the lists were from part 1. I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. I basically, as you know, I had the bikes, the Dire Avengers, the Striking Scorpions, I had artillery, and the obviously my Dark Reaper's backfield with the Spirit Seer.
Yep.
Now, came in at 999 points. And if we're talking Menza Open, we're talking about an uncommon metagame where we're thinking Psychic Death Stars, we're thinking Warp Spider MSU, we're thinking Riptides, all stealth, optimized stealth card rate, all these really powerful polarizing formations that we're familiar with.
Yep.
And that a lot of people are kind of scared of. A lot of people don't like playing uncomped because they feel like, they're walking into an unfenced landscape that they can get. There's so many predators out there that will feast on them.
But it's a little bit like when you hit like level 10 and you leave the starting zone in WoW and you venture out into the Barrens and you're like, what's out here? And then you get ganked.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
You see the question marks and you're like, ah!
Don't worry, guys. We're going to teach you how to do the ganking. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, my list was obviously community comp 0 credit list. Things like the Striking Scorpions, 0 credits. You didn't really min-max anything. So how would I make this list optimize it for Menza Open? Well, the first thing I would do is look at what I did in the previous segment and kind of say what underperformed at Norris. What do I think obviously needs to be removed? So obviously something like a Spirit Seer is a 0 comp HQ choice that I think is almost always outclassed in an uncomp metagame by a Farseer. And if you've got a Spirit Seer model or a Farseer model, they're very interchangeable. So what I've done is I've removed my Spirit Seer from my list and I've replaced it with a Farseer Skyrunner. So he's on a bike. The 15-point upgrade to put him on a bike is well worth it. He gets the mobility, he gets the extra toughness, which is really relevant against being ID'd. He gets, jinking ability and stuff like that. And it also means, which is something that's much underused, is the ability to flat out.
Yep.
So he can move out, use psychic buff, psychic shooting, and then flat out in the shooting phase out of line of sight again. So you can even kind of run him in a unit of bikes for that purpose, or even on his own. Sometimes you can safely have him. So I've done that. I've removed my Dire Avengers in the Wave Serpent because I feel like in an uncomp metagame, a single unit of Dire Avengers is just not competitive enough. They're interesting. They've got some capacity with their OBSEC, but I've replaced them with 2 units of 3 scatter bikes. So those 2 units of 3, all those bikes have scatter lasers. My models don't have scatter lasers, so I'm actually modeled up I've used some small tubing. I've basically green stuffed some guns on them. So I'm actually kind of scratch building my own scatter lasers to model onto those bikes.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm going to have the 2 units of 3 scatter bikes to replace the Dire Avengers in the Serpent. I've got some floating points which I'm going to use elsewhere. My 6 unit of bikes with the Warlock, I'm keeping that unit, except I'm upgrading all the bikes to have scatter lasers. Okay. Just because obviously scatter lasers are something that are constrained by the community comp credits on them.
Sure.
But in an uncomped metagame, I think it's well worth paying the 10 points per scatter. I can understand some people maybe having a couple of ablative models without scatters.
Yeah.
The bikes are so maneuverable and they have such long range that you can probably just...
When you give them the scatter lasers, their range becomes what, 36?
36 plus the 12,
yep.
plus their assault move, they can move back again.
So you go from 18 to 36.
Very
good,
right?
Right?
Yeah, pretty much. So I've kept that unit as a 6 model unit with a Warlock for the same reason as before. It gives you the ability to cast Conceal, and you put the Skyrunner in there as well. So you've got this a bit of a Bastion unit. The Skyrunner can go for things like invisibility, can go for obviously can roll for Fortune and the Eldar tree. So a lot of flexibility. So I've kept my Dark Reapers, except I've had to trim them by 1 model. So I had in my Norris list, I had 6 Dark Reapers with Exarch and Starshot. This I've got 5 with including the Exarch. Now I've got my Vol's Wrath battery with the Warlock. I've kept that, except I've transitioned for it to be the D
Yep.
battery. So instead of having the Shadow Weavers, they've got their D cannons.
Is that and more green stuff and tubing?
No, I've actually got those models.
Oh, fantastic.
So I've got both of them. So I've got the D cannons, unit of 3. For those who don't know what those models do, 24-inch range, barrage, D. So with 3 of them in the unit, I've got triple barrage,
Small blast.
small blast D. Should be noted that in Menza Open range D has been nerfed in accordance with the ITC nerfs. So you can only do, on a roll of a 6, instead of being D6, what is it, D6 plus 6?
D6 plus 6.
Instead of D6 plus 6 wounds with no saves of any kind, it's just 3 wounds with no saves of any kind. So it's nowhere near as explosively insane as it is in the normal game, but I still think that they're really strong. They're really good board zoning.
Yep.
And 25 points per model upgrade is expensive, but I think it can be worth it in this meta. And lastly, I have some floating points from the Wave Serpent that I dropped. Those floating points... I've also dropped the Striking Scorpions. So there's something that, in addition to the Dire Avengers, I've said, okay, Striking Scorpions, not so keen on them in an uncomp meta. That's not to say they couldn't be played, but I removed them and replaced them with 6 Warp Spiders. So 6 Warp Spiders with Exarch, small unit. People that have played against Warp Spiders, I'm sure we all have if we've been playing for a while, know in the various editions they've been really good. They're still really good. So 6 Warp Spiders with Exarch, that's my main list.
Okay, and that comes in at how many points?
Comes in at 998.
Okay, so you dropped a point.
I dropped a point.
Yep, and you rounded out that 1,000.
So that's my core list. So that's a Battle Forged Eldar CAD. I could have, if I wanted to, have put a second formation in there somehow, but that's just, I've left it open. I've got a CAD. I've got 3 troops choices. I've got a couple of heavy support choices, and the obviously the fast attack.
Yep.
So it's pretty well rounded, and it's given me a platform, I think, to expand into some sideboards.
Okay, we'll explore your sideboards in a second.
Sure. So let's have a look at your
Okay.
library list.
So, once again, unfortunately, would love to play. Really excited to be able to play, but I'm not. I'll be TOing. But where am I going? I'm still honing down my list. Been working on it for a while now. So, once again, I'm not going to go through my Norris list because I covered that in the last video. But just briefly, we have the Grandmaster, a unit of Terminators, 2 Dreadknights, and Drago. What I've done with that in order to try and build a platform, because I realized that it's about creating the platform that it will enable your sideboards to be effective. So I've kept mostly the same units, but we made a few changes, and the biggest change is the way they're configured. So I was running a Nemesis Strike Force initially. I've actually changed that to now be 2 Nemesis Strike Forces, and I've juggled some points around. So I dropped Drago and the Grandmaster, and then I replaced them with 3 Librarians, and I'll go through the split in a second. But then I also kept the Terminators, kept the 2 Dreadknights, had to add a unit of Strikes.
Did you change any of the loadouts for the Dreadknights and the Terminators?
The Dreadknights no longer have hammers,
Yep.
and I had to drop the side cannon out of the Terminators.
So you've actually trimmed them down.
I've trimmed them down a little bit.
Okay.
Yep. So what we've got is we've got the first Nemesis Strike Force, which is my primary detachment. It has 1 Librarian level 3 with the lever and upgraded to level 3. We have a second Librarian only level 2.
Okay.
Then we've got the troop option in there is a unit of Terminators, bare bones.
Yep.
And then we have, that's it. That's all.
That's
for that
the first Nemesis Strike
That
Force.
is, and that's now my Warlords from that detachment. That's my primary detachment.
Yep.
The second Nemesis Strike Force contains another level 3 Librarian, a unit of 5 Strike Marines as the troop option, and 2 Dreadknights. Now what I've done is I've put those 2 Dreadknights into my second detachment, which allows me to take other options in my primary detachment when I get to that. So when we talk about underperforming lists, Jeremy made a few references to how things went at his in his Norris list. I found that overall my list was just not working, and it was missing some very big elements to it. And so I've tried to plug them in a few different ways, and I'll go through them as we do our sideboards. But the biggest thing for me was just splitting the single Nemesis Strike Force into 2 Nemesis Strike Forces, and then opening the doors to more options.
So what you've had to do effectively is obviously to split those into 2 things. You've had to put in shoehorn in another troops choice because Nemesis Strike Forces is just the 1 troops minimum. So in order to afford those 5 strikes, you just had to drop some upgrades, and you've reconfigured for 3 Libbies instead of Drago and a GM.
Yeah, and it's funny that there was almost a lateral points transition. So Librarians are less competitive in community comp due to the credit costing that they suffer from. But once you unlock the doors to no comp, you there's no reason not to take a level 3 librarian.
And they can also roll on like the new trees, like Fulmination.
They got better with Angels of Death. They've got access to all the new Space Marine psychic powers. They're level 3s in Terminator armor for 135 points. They're pretty good.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so should we go over to have a look at my sideboards?
Yeah, let's have a look at your sideboards.
So, and this is more of a general thing. So when I'm constructing sideboards, my first thought is it's the same way that the kind of logic you use in a team challenge. We've just come back from Australian Team Challenge.
Yep.
So we had a lot of discussions, a lot of thoughts about that. We've also got Community Comp Team Challenge coming out. And some of the psychology that we use when we're constructing our team lists is you want lists to be kind of front feet forward, like offensive, aggressive lists. And you want defensive lists that can, you can put up and that can take a hit from a counter list and still be in the running to maybe snag a win even. So what I wanted to do is I wanted my sideboards to be aggressive feet forward, something that I could say, this is a play.
Yep.
You have to think about this play, and then I wanted to be able to have a counter sideboard or two where I can say, this is a dagger, that if you're taking a specifically unwieldy list, I can shiv you with a dagger. So my first sideboard is a Wraith Knight. I've obviously got a Lord of War slot available in my CAD.
Yep.
Wraith Knight, we all know how good they are. Like, they're undercosted in terms of points.
Yep.
They're really powerful. I've taken a Wraith Knight. I wanted to take, so this is a bit of a thing, I'll talk about it very briefly. I have gone with the D Cannon Wraith Knight. Now the reason why I've gone with the D Cannon Wraith Knight is twofold. Firstly, I have that model, and I don't have the sword model, so that is a consideration. The second consideration is I wanted my list to have the ability to deal with long-range threats, things like Riptides. I wanted to be able to gib a Riptide from long range. If someone's got an Imperial Knight, I want to be able to have something that can deal with it from range without putting too much pressure on my core list. So the Wraith Knight, while it's also very powerful in combat, I wanted it to be a bit of a tech choice that can come in to deal with something like an Imperial Knight.
Like a big Gribbly.
Yeah, like a Storm Surge. I can give a Storm Surge. Even though I can't roll on the 6 tables, it's just a 3 wounds, that's still 3 wounds with no saves allowed. So it just goes straight through their invul and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So Wraith Knight with D cannons, it comes in at 295 points. So I've given it the 2 star cannons as upgrades, which are the strength 6 2-shot AP2 guns.
Yep.
So it comes in at 335. I'm missing 15 points, but there's no way I can spend those points. So I'm happy with that as a sideboard.
Was there any other logic behind taking a Wraith Knight in the sideboard?
Well, taking the Wraith Knight in the sideboard is a psychological play as well as it is a practical play. Obviously, it's a very go-to option. Like, it's probably one of my default options there is when I present my list, I'm very much saying to my opponent, this is my core list, and this is my Wraith Knight that I'm probably going to use. So what are you going to do? And then my opponent has to look at their list and sideboards and have a counter there to a Wraith Knight. If they don't, they're in trouble. And I'm definitely going to take that Wraith Knight if they don't have a counter to it.
Right. But even if they did have a counter, you would then have you kind of baiting them into playing their counter.
Yeah.
And giving yourself the option to not take
I could not take it. Then it just becomes a game of bluffing. Like, we've all played poker. We all know what bluffing is. My opponent they have to think, is he going to take his Wraith Knight knowing that I have a counter? Do I have to take my counter? And then it's just a mind game where we level up. Eventually, we each make a decision and one of us comes out on top. I think it's a really good psychological tool as well as an effective option. That's my first sideboard. My second sideboard is a defensive side. So I would say that's an aggressive sideboard. Yep. My second sideboard is a defensive sideboard. This is a bunker with an escape hatch. That can be taken as a fortification choice in my CAD.
Yep.
Now, in that bunker, I've taken a Calexis Assassin, so he can be deployed in the bunker as per the rules we're playing. So we've got the Assassin in the bunker with an escape hatch, anti-psyker tech choice.
Yep.
Now that came in with some floating points. It's obviously the bunker's only 75 points. The bunker actually has a searchlight as well because I floated some points. So the bunker with the searchlight, escape hatch, and the Calexis, with those floating points I took a unit of 3 monofilament Vol's Wrath. So I had the points left over. I didn't have enough points to take another unit of D. And I thought, just as a bit of diversity, having a unit of 3 with the monofilament gives me a kind of something that I could deploy on the parapets of the bunker. I could use it as a bit of a long range threat against Death Stars. So obviously this Calexis sideboard is a counterplay to a Psychic Death Star. And I feel like if I'm running a Psychic Death Star, what is my strategy? My strategy would be to disembark my Colexis and debuff them when they're trying to assault me, coming at me. Once they're debuffed, my barrage, both my D barrage and my monofilament barrage, can target their psychers. They're really important elements of their star, and I can take it from the inside out. I can kind of implode it, bring it from the inside out. So that sideboard is very much of an anti-star sideboard.
Yeah, it's good. I like that you could put the D. I would probably be looking at putting the D on top of that bunker, deploying the bunker a bit further forward, and then because you've got better range on the monofilament.
That's probably, you're right. So you place the D. The D, you get your, obviously a 4-up cover, you can conceal the D for a 2-up cover save. Then you've got your monofilament a bit further back to give long range support. So that all came in, that all fit. So that's my sideboard 2.
I like it.
My sideboard 3 kind of wrote itself in a way, but it's also very much of a middle ground. So this one is an aspect host with 3 units of warp spiders. In addition to the warp spiders I have in my primary. So I've got 6 warp spiders in my primary detachment with an Exarch. This sideboard has got 3 units, 1 unit of 6 with Exarch and 2 units of 5 with Exarch.
Yeah, right.
They comes in at 334 points. Couldn't squeeze anything else in. Why did I take them? Warp spiders are a similar play to the Wraith Knight. They're a top level Eldar power play that people know how powerful warp spiders are. I don't really need to talk about why they're so good. So what I'm saying to my opponent is I have the option of taking a Wraith Knight or warp spiders. What are you going to do? Are you going to counter one or the other? If they've got a counter on their sideboard to one but not to the other, then I might take the sideboard that has no counter available. So I've given myself some diversity. The reason why I didn't put them in my main cat is that something like warp spiders are vulnerable to things like if you're playing the scouring mission where fast attack generates extra choices. If you're playing a mission that you feel like your opponent has the number on warp spiders, you can say, you know what, we're playing the scouring and my opponent's got lots of like SMS in their list. You know what, let's not take that.
Of course.
So they're a good, I think that's a good kind of go-to option when the Wraith Knight isn't good and I don't need my Colexis.
Yeah. And it's interesting the things that counter a Wraith Knight don't work very well against warp spiders. So they're very polarizing in that sense. Like, tools like things like, a big grav drop or something like that that's going to be very effective against a Wraith Knight isn't very good against a warp spider.
Like a melter drop or grav drop or, exactly.
So, no, it's interesting there. So that's very well constructed.
Yeah, so I feel like this is a list that I very well might take. I am playing in the Menza Open, guys, just in case people didn't know. Sean's TOing it, so I'm playing this. You might see this list there. So, you got
a plan for Wraith Knights.
Yeah, think about Wraith Knights with D cannons. Think about warp spiders. Think about how powerful that bunker with the escape hatch is. I think that at 1350, it's going to be hard for people to construct like insano psychic Death Stars, but I know it's possible, and I know that you'll somehow kind of manage to do it in your list. So let's move over to you and have a look at what you did with your sideboard.
Okay, so we talked about what was bad in our list and how we sort of try and plug those holes. So I found that when we were playing the 1,000-point games, 2 Dreadknights was just not enough to saturate my opponent. Even despite having a unit that like a little mini Death Star, 5-man Timidia that was gating into the enemy lines. Running up these 2 Dreadknights, my opponent just sort of, saturated one, and then they like fled around the side, and the star was too slow to catch up. So I figured, how do you overwhelm your opponent with more Dreadknights? You just take more Dreadknights. So
makes sense.
My first sideboard is literally just 2 more Dreadknights, and they're taken in the primary detachment, which is my primary NSF, and that's why I left those 2 slots open there.
So yeah, for people that are a bit confused about why you're saying that, it's because in our the format for the MTF, the MTF stipulates, and Menza Triboard Format stipulates that when you're adding units to a sideboard, you can either add units from a new formation, a new detachment, or add to your primary detachment. So if you have a secondary detachment, if you have, say, an Inquisition, or in Sean's case, he's got an NSF and another NSF that's not his primary, he can't add units to his second NSF.
Correct.
He can only add units to his primary NSF.
And the primary one being the one that your Waller was taken from.
He's left that open so that he can add to that.
So my first sideboard was literally just 2 more Dreadknights, both with jump packs, and then I had a little bit of points in there. I was able to squeeze in 1 Incinerator. So it just gives me that 4 shunting Dreadknights, and then I still retain my 8-man star that will gate in behind them.
That's a lot of Dreadknights.
That's a lot of Dreadknights. Yep. And hopefully they'll do some work. Hopefully when you got enough of something that actually like hits a point where it's critical mass, you know you're going to lose one dreadnought, probably 2 on the way in, but if you can impact with 2, start pulling off some smash shenanigans, hopefully you get a bit more value out of them when they make combat. So that was my first one. It's pretty clean. The second list, as Jeremy said, we have lists that we look to put forward and play aggressively and say, I'm making a play. It's up to you to try and adapt to the play I'm making. Then we have our other lists that are counter lists. So one of the things I realized was that MSU, even with 4 Dreadnoughts, MSU is going to be a problem for me. And something like a Warp Spider spam list would give me a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, I created a sideboard that I thought would be very effective at handling things that had a lot of mobility and could just...
So things like Screamers, Warp Spiders, Zelda Bikes...
Yeah, all that. Things that are running away. Battle suits. Yeah, getting away from me, and things I can't catch. I created a list. I took a Space Marine Allied Detachment. There's 1 level 2 Librarian, a unit of 5 Scouts and Snipers for the troop tax, and then a unit of 2 1 unit of 2 Thunderfire Cannons. So they'll just bolster up a couple ruins, put my Dreadnoughts on them for that 3 up save maybe on turn 1, and then they can just sit back field and just barrage all game. And it's very hard to get to someone's Thunderfires if they've got like a big Terminator star in the middle. So that kind of makes my Terminators a little bit more better. Yeah. Because then I'm sort of forcing my opponent to come forward a little bit more instead of having to be the aggressor.
Yeah, I really like that sideboard. That sideboard's very similar to my second one.
Yeah.
In the sense that you obviously don't have the collectors. You don't really need it though, because you've got a lot of your own psychic ability. But you've got the barrage as a counterplay, and I think that barrage is effective in that method. In that you're saying to your opponent, if you're doing shenanigans that involve things like lookout sirring, and you've got like unit positioning, and often like when you have a Death Star, a Death Star is very much of a puzzle. Like you've set up this little matrix of lookouts or options,
little phalanx.
So barrage is very effective against that. But as you said, it's also very effective at hitting things you can't see. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so I've had a lot of success from Thunderfires in the past. They recently went down in community comp credits, so I'm keen to break them out again when I get a chance. But yeah, I see no reason not to take Thunderfires as like a tool to sort of pick apart the puzzle, as you said. It also, with that level 2 Librarian, he then has access to Malefic Demonology, which is something that my Grey Knights don't have access to. And then, again, I can pull some plays backfield and say, look, if you don't come to me, I'm going to get value over here,
some demons.
And I'm going to do some stuff in my backfield. So they're kind of trying to encourage my opponent to play more aggressively to hopefully bring my Terminators into the game a bit more.
Yeah. 2 Thunderfires for 200 points. Thunderfire is one of the most efficient
absolutely
artillery units in the game. Just because not only are they really powerful artillery, but when the Thunderfire cannon is destroyed, you've got a Tech Marine with Servo Harness that I think on his own is 90 points, something like that.
Yeah.
So you actually get the Thunderfire is 10-point upgrade for a Tech Marine with Harness. So the Thunderfire, he loses his my 10-point gun's dead. It that only shoots 4 barrage per turn, and now I'm just going to ball around and go and assault stuff. And he's good.
He's pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel comfortable throwing him into a unit of bikes or something.
Yeah, I think you do fairly well.
My third sideboard, again, we talked about trying to get value. I think one of the hardest things when I'm playing Grey Knights is trying to get value out of Terminators. They're a pretty, they're an interesting unit. They're not very highly rated in the community, and for good reason. They're not that great, I find. It's very hard to get them to work. They always need something to enable them. So what I did was, with my third sideboard, I created a play that I thought would enable me to get value from my Terminators. It's very simple. It's 350 points of a Librarius Conclave. White Scars. I've got 1 Librarian level 2 on a bike with the Mantle of the Stormseer. Another level 2 on a bike with an Auspex, I think I fit in. And then there's another level 2 Librarian with the mandatory jump pack, because you'd never not.
So there's a few decisions that we can just unpack there. So obviously the jump pack is there for the new FAQ that we are using, because we are using the Australian FAQ. That means where the Australian FAQ has already incorporated the GW draft FAQs.
Yep.
So the GW draft FAQ stipulates that if you have 1 model in a unit with a jump pack and it does not use its jump pack in the movement phase, it can confer its benefit of the assault phase reroll to its whole unit.
Yep.
So it makes a jump pack kind of mandatory in any Death Star if you have access to it.
If you can,
and if you don't already have fleet or something like that.
Yeah, if you can squeeze it in, you got no good reason not to.
Yeah. And what about the Mantle of the Stormseer? Because we know that White Scars, you're not getting hit and run. Like,
correct.
So some people might look at that and go, oh, he doesn't get hit. No, you know you're not getting hit and run.
Yep.
So you've actually taken white scars for that relic. Do you want to explain what that relic does?
The relic gives you the Psychic Maelstrom power from the Telekinesis tree, I believe it is. And that's a Warp Charge 3, Strength 10, AP 2, Large Blast.
I think it's AP1 actually.
AP1.
I don't actually. I could be wrong.
And that's just another tool that you have. Like when you've got a very psychic heavy army, sometimes with Grey Knights you're going to want to be casting different powers. This just gives me another offensive psychic shooting power, just to get value out of all my dice.
Especially because like Librarius Conclave, it only casts 2 powers per turn if they're bunched up. Which often they will be.
Yep.
And if you are only casting 2 powers, you kind of want to make those powers worth casting. So obviously you've got things like your defensive powers, like you'll be going for invisibility, you'll be going for Veil of Time.
Yep.
But if you get one of those powers off, you might think, okay, that's enough defense. Or you might have one of your Grey Knight Psychers that can cast one of those.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to cast this Warp Charge 3, devastating the offensive power. You can cast that on 4 dice pretty reliably.
One of the biggest problems is with the MSU meta against a Death Star. Sometimes you just, your Death Star will kill 1 unit every turn, but sometimes that's not enough. So you need to be killing multiple units with your Death Star, and that was some of the motivation behind taking that Mantle of Stormseer. It allows me to get value from targets that are nearby.
Yeah, I like it. I like it in uncomp meta especially. Like in community comp, it's not as good because you can't really squeeze a Librarius Conclave. And when you don't have a Librarius Conclave, it's a lot harder to cast those high warp charge spells. You're going to be perilsing every time, and it's not going to take too long before that specific guy is just going to perils himself out.
Correct.
But in uncomp, where you can cast a very pithy amount of dice at it, it's good.
So the Conclave, I think, is going to fulfill a secondary role in addition to that. The big play there is that I've got 3 Grey Knights that are Librarians. So one of them's basically level 4 with the Libra Demonica. And what that allows me to do, I've got 4 rolls on the Sanctic tree, and I'm looking for gate. And what the gate then becomes, a big problem with Grey Knights is when you deep strike a unit in, they just sort of run away, because you can't deep strike too aggressively with the gate because you might perils whatever. If you perils out with your star, so if you mishap out with your star, it's devastating. So you've got to be a little bit conservative with where you choose to deep strike. What the Conclave does is it enables me to get those guaranteed charges afterwards, because with the 2 Librarians on bikes, they can effectively string out, and when you actually move the star and you got the bike bases, you line them up, it actually becomes a 12-inch moving unit. So I can catch things that might be able to try and
so
outrun Grey Knights.
Having 3 models, 3 or 4 models in your unit with 12-inch move effectively gives your unit 12-inch move.
Correct.
Because you only need 3 or 4 models to maintain coherency over 6 inches.
Yep.
So, or even less. But the idea
and you've got to go with the jump as well.
So you turn a unit that normally is a move 6 charge into a unit that can move 12 in charge. So that Librarius Conclave, not only is it giving you this insane amount of caster capacity and force axes and things like that, but it's giving you 12-inch charge and 12-inch moving Terminators, basically.
Correct.
Yeah, I like it.
So failing my opponent having hit and run or something like that, I think that would provide a lot of value, particularly useful against things like Tau gunline, stuff like that. When they're going to use their thrust moves to try and create more distance, I can say, well, no, I'm going to get you.
The only problem is obviously that those Librarians are lookouts are into themselves on Overwatch. So then Overwatch becomes a bit dangerous. But is a possibility. And
absolutely. That's where you got to look to your 15, 20 warp charge and hope to get Veil of Time, Endurance, something like that.
Yeah, and that generally is enough. Okay, guys, so that kind of rounds out our lists. We both feel like these lists, we didn't write these lists to counter each other. We actually were writing these lists separately. We did this process individually. We agreed that we were going to use our Norris lists as our cornerstone, but it's interesting that we've come up with similar things. Like we both have a barrage element to our sideboards, like a counterplay element. We both have a couple of strong plays that are different. So if I was instead of kind of hypothesize about what we would do, why don't we actually simulate what if we were playing each other?
Well, we shouldn't really need too much time to think because we've already sort of discussed our lists in quite a lot of depth. So we could almost just do it right now. So
so what we're going to do is we're going to cut and we're going to come back and we're going to have our lists ready to do the exchange as it would be done in game. Now this process in a real game might take you 5 minutes. You go off with your opponent's lists and you kind of say, okay, well, you feel free to take 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes to think. Don't feel pressure. We have a lot of time in the schedule for this process. So this process would normally take 5 minutes or so, but we're going to cut and we're going to come back with our big reveal. So see you soon.